pause any of us ever expected to be going through, particularly at this point in our lives. But the Building Congress continues to be here for everybody in our industry, and obviously we are working as hard as we can to continue to get updates to ensure that leaders on the city, state, and federal level understand the importance of the building industry and what it means for not just New York City and the region, but really the effect it has on our economy, how the building industry really is poised to start up as we start thinking about rebuilding our economy and getting back to work. And when you think about rebuilding the city and getting back to work and building and construction, obviously there is no one I can think of better who knows this stuff inside out, and that is Commissioner of the New York City Department of Buildings, dear friend Melanie La Rocca. Commissioner, I'm going to skip this wonderful intro that I had planned for you because we have hundreds of people that are already writing questions. So I say we jump right into it. I will just say one thing before I introduce the commissioner to give a minute or two of opening. This commissioner has probably the hardest job right now in New York City in terms of our industry, because with the guidance of the state and the city, the Fed, I mean, there's so many different things that come online every day. It's the commissioner and her team that really are dealing with it and are updating us constantly. So, Commissioner, welcome to Espresso with Carlo. I am actually having my espresso. There you are, you're having your coffee. So, salute. Commissioner, I'm gonna ask you to just give a minute or two and then we'll jump right into, I have some questions and I know we have lots of them.
That sounds great. Thank you, Carlo. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm dialing in from beautiful 280 Broadway. So, you know, certainly my view behind me is, while literally the same because the buildings are all there and I'm thankful for that, it is quite a different view from my office, from my perch today than it was 2 months ago. And it's almost incomprehensible how 2 months ago, February, seems like literally a lifetime ago. It is really quite remarkable how you lose track of you know, how disorienting this has been. You know, I don't know for others on, but certainly for me, no concept of time, no concept of days. It is every day is another repeat of yesterday with the goal of getting a little closer to normal. And meanwhile, this entire time, we've been operating in some way, shape, or form as we normally would have, meaning the core function of what we do has been continuing because obviously the construction industry has been continuing. Now, with the governor's executive order and our subsequent guidance to that, our two guidance that we put out, there have been limits to that, but construction is still working, is still going on, and we still have people visiting our offices to continue the activities that lead up to construction. So our pre-development, our A&E teams, industry partners are still coming in. How they interact with us has changed dramatically. And in the last 6 weeks or so, we have taken an agency that has been for the last, you know, version of however long we've been around, has been paper-based and paper-driven, and we have started the rapid transformation of how this agency operates. So a couple of interesting tidbits, and then I'll stop because I know folks have lots of questions and we have lots of people here and I want to hear from everybody. But we've had about 90% of construction sites are not currently active, and we have about 90% change, 90% reduction of in-person interactions and business processing with the department. So you look at, again, 2 months ago, that would have been unheard of. And in a little snippet of time, we've changed pretty dramatically. So that's where we are. We're still working. We're still here to support everybody and make sure jobs are going ahead that are allowed to safely. So that's what we've been up to. And then I turn it back to you, Carlo.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Well, I was going to ask you, how have you adapted and how has the agency adapted?
Man,
A lot of changes. Maybe jump in with what you find as the biggest changes, I think, that the agency has done that really affect the industry.
I think the most obvious change has been on that point about reducing our in-person transactions. I mean, we spend every single day, we have a standing meeting here with my folks on where we are with COVID. And part of that is literally, where are we with our business process? Your TR1s and your BW1s, like where are we with the individual forms and how that relates back into all the other systems that we're doing, and how we can continue to push those business processes onto a different non-paper system. So whether that's through e-filing, whether that's email, whether that's phone, whether that's mail, we are literally spending every minute of our time figuring out how we can change our process. Now, mind you, this is all under biz, which was never contemplated to do the things that we're asking that system, that mainframe, to do. And this is also while we still are launching and moving forward with DOB now. We have cranes that's happening this weekend. So the things we're doing here in terms of how we're changing our model of delivery, of service delivery, that stuff is happening so rapidly that it's really impressive that we're all able to keep up with it. And of course, we're giving folks as much lead time as we can, but as we build, as we change e-submit, as we change biz, all of that is happening essentially in real time. So that has been a really big part of how we're trying to make sure that our staff is safe. Certainly that's my top priority. I've got to make sure my people are safe and still able to support the industry. And how do you do that? The first thing to go was that in-person interaction where we could. So that's been pretty time consuming. And also it's been really freeing, I think, on my end to be able to say, look, we're going to change. We have to change. We all knew we had to change. That's why they started DOB now so many years ago. But now this is a real bump to that, to say, we can't wait for the best version of what we can be, which will help us. DOB now will help us get there. We've got to do it now. We've got to help ourselves now. So that's been quite a feat to do.
Yes,
that.
and you guys are doing great with it. So look, there are some sites that are open, obviously. The governor and ESD have issued clarifications on essential. Obviously, DOB has issued their guidelines on essential. Just quickly tell us what is essential in your mind. And then one question that goes with that, for registered construction sites, do they have to submit a weekly safety report? Or is it just for those that are suspended? So that's a question that I think goes with this. But who's open? Who's working?
So right now we actually have about 90% of sites that are not working. So the remaining universe is a little bit sprinkling of kind of everybody. So for who's essential, essential is irrelevant what my mind says. The guidance that we published, the second guidance we published, is that determining factor. So a big piece of this, though, is I do want folks coming through our portal. If you anticipate that you will be reactivating your site, if you believe you are essential, and want to reactivate your site, go through our portal. Our service levels on the portal are phenomenal. You're getting a response same day in some instances, 1 day turnaround in nearly every case. So if you think you're essential, come to the portal before you start work, get your certificate from us. We created a certificate that you will get once you're through the portal that you can put on your job site. So it makes it very clear to everybody that you have in fact been deemed essential, or that your work is falls under the emergency provisions. Makes it very simple and easy for my guys in the field, for members of the public who are seeing this activity, in some cases seeing sites that have been inactive now reactivated. And also that gets bundled with our real-time map that is updated, like I said, in real time. So we are, though, as I mentioned, we do our daily COVID meetings, and a big part of our COVID meeting today was talking about who's working, how many sites we're seeing working, and are there any differences? And I think it's pretty clear. Most of our sites are in the essential business versus the emergency, and within the essential, it is a pretty decent smattering all throughout. And remember, ESD did broaden the categories of sites that could be deemed essential. So now it is both that the type of work is essential, the actual physical construction work that's happening is essential, and the nexus to an essential business. So I think our guidance is pretty clear, but I'm happy to dive into that a little deeper if folks want.
No, I think, you know, it was a little confusing, and not because of DOB, just because of all the back and forth. I think people now know what is essential versus not essential. And I think the conversation, at least from what the calls and emails I get daily, is what are we doing next? Are we preparing? Okay, we got the essential, we get it, but this is not going to be the universe forever. So God willing, in a few weeks, a month, whenever that may be,
Okay.
we'll go back to work. Have you all started thinking about what does that mean? Is there, in your mind, that DOB going to be a phase-in process of how people go back to work? Or is it going to be, you know, sites can reopen and here are the new protocols? And what will the new protocols be on your end?
Yeah, so, and you know what, I realized I didn't answer your second part, Carlo, so I'm sorry of the question you asked before. So on the sites, on the folks that have to do the weekly, that's for sites that are not active. Not active, and that have site safety personnel assigned to it. So a subset of the entire permitted universe. And that's actually an area I'd like to see much better strict adherence from the industry on following those DOB rules. So we did actually send out yesterday a targeted email to permit holders and site safety professionals that are associated with jobs where those weeklies are required. So hopefully that reminds folks of their obligation. And obviously I'm not trying, you know, nobody here is trying to get folks out just to do unnecessary work. We are, in fact, every day doing inspections of sites, both essential sites and non-essential sites, to ensure that the work is happening safely and correctly and in accordance with plans, obviously on the essential sites, but on the non-essentials to make sure that they are still not activated and that there are no obvious safety issues. Because certainly we obviously have concerns about making sure during this period that our members of the public are safe and there are no immediate hazards. Now, to your actual question about what the world looks like, you know, that one is probably the hardest question that presents itself to everybody, right? From your perspective, it's a different, your considerations are slightly different than mine, because now I'm thinking through, well, this has been an experience that none of us could have foreseen. The department has done things that we could never have ever imagined we would be doing. I never would have imagined that my inspectors, who are top-notch, committed DOB team members, would be out and participating in the city's efforts to enforce the various executive orders around social distancing, around making sure that folks are not using spaces and gatherings. You know, these are things that are out
Not
of
in their job description, right?
not in our job description, and yet
Not in what they studied for in school.
certainly not. And you know, you ask any random person off the street, what does DOB do? The answer is never going to be they enforce social distancing or they enforce the ban on gatherings. You know, that's not our typical, but nothing of what anybody in the city is doing is their typical. So, you know, what the future looks like in the future, what the future looks like, who knows? You know, whether the governor is going to say everybody and the mayor are going to say everybody, you know, tomorrow go back to work, or you phase in that approach, and how that specifically impacts the industry that we deal with, our universe. You know, your best guess is my best guess, but we can see that, you know, you've seen the loosening up from ESD on their guidance of what's essential. And obviously we are ensuring that the department's guidance is in accordance and in keeping with ESDs. But there's also, you know, considerations that our colleagues in the medical field will have to weigh in on. From my perspective, we'll be there to manage what that future looks like. And we've started those conversations. We've heard from industry folks on what does it look like when we're all back to work? What does that mean that next day? In terms of folks that are still working to get their plans approved, but now we've obviously held off on issuing new permits for non-essential. So, you know, the questions have been ranging from, I've got my job, what do you think, DOB, your turnaround time is going to be to make sure we can actually pull our permit when we're all back to work at that level we were at before this? And then the actual, what happens on a job site? You know, how does that interaction take place? I think the best thing that my department can do is, one, make sure we can handle the volume on day one or day 1A, whatever it may be, and to make sure that we're communicating what that volume is to make sure everybody understands the expectations, just simple table setting. But equally as important as our service to the industry is, what do we want the industry to look like in the future? And part of that is really, you know, what can we do as a department to support you as the industry's efforts to innovate, efforts to change how you practice your business, and to make sure that where you want to advance and change, we're keeping up with you. I don't ever believe that there should be a cat and mouse game happening between industry and the department. It's my job to support you. It's your job to do it. My lights just turned off. Sorry about that. It's your job to do it right and in accordance with my with our rules. But that's a relationship that we have to have together. Lights are back on. Thank you.
And you know, I wanna touch on the innovation. Obviously, you know, the Building Congress, at least in the last 2 years, we've really ramped up our innovation council, and we hosted our first innovation event last year, which we will be doing innovatively remotely this year, so stay tuned. But, you know, are there things that, given the new world that we're going to be living in, even if we reopen May 15th, you know, great, we're open, it's still not going to be the same as it was March 1st. We get that. What are things that DOB could say? You know, we get social distancing, we understand the new norm. Are there things, and one of our co-chairs, Tom Scarangello, who's been leading this for us, has been talking about this with us as well, but are things like technological solutions that mean that fewer people have to come into DOB, that mean fewer inspectors need to be actually on a job site? Are there things we should start thinking about that can do that? And then I just want to, when you finish that, I want to just backtrack a minute. Because one of the problems I think DOB and all of us are going to face is that everyone, we hope, is going to want to get back to work on day one. So everyone's going to want to pull their permit day one. Are there things that DOB could be doing now for people who, assuming have all their ducks in a row and are ready to work, but all they have to do is pull a permit? Could they start doing some of that process now and get their permit ready so that they don't need to be online day one with everybody else? So I know there's two kind of very different questions there, but we'll tackle them.
Okay, we'll take the first one. We'll take them in order, I should say. So on the innovative side, yeah, we're trying to figure out, in the absence of DOB now, which is going to be the sort of the cherry on top of DOB innovating, DOB catching up with the rest of the world and being in a position to make sure that we're the most efficient version of ourselves. While we wait for that rollout to continue, and it is still proceeding, so I don't want folks to think that COVID has derailed that, because that's critically important to our agency. So Cranes happens this weekend. We still are anticipating doing GC launch later this year. So that's still moving on track. But what can we do now to limit how people come into the department, and frankly, to avoid the coming into the department? So like I said, we've seen a 90% drop since pre-COVID on how many interactions you have to do person to person. That doesn't mean that we've gotten rid of all the paper or have gotten rid of all the no contact drop-offs that we instituted immediately. So we have more work to do on our end to try to figure out how we can start peeling away the differences between, you know, you make this payment online, this payment you have to come in and talk to 15 different people. We're going to use this opportunity to try to keep peeling away those layers of that onion. So that's on the interacting with DOB. In the field, I would say, you know, from our perspective, and similar to you, Carlo, we've now really taken hold of the notion that we have to innovate for ourselves in a business process, you know, absolutely, but also we have to be a center of innovation, and we have to actually support innovation in the industry. And what does that actually mean from a product perspective, right? We're the regulator, we're the enforcer. And so when we think of innovation, you know, I think people think that that just means that DOB itself has to innovate. Well, at the end of the day, you cannot replace a in-person inspection. And you cannot have technology replace people, individuals, my team that's going out in the field to do complaint response or proactive inspections. But what you can do is have technology, A, help the department do that, and B, help the industry change their physical sites. And so we launched yesterday, I think we sent out, yesterday we sent out on Earth Day, we launched our Sustainability Innovation Challenge. So if folks haven't seen that, check our website. We put out the press release yesterday on the launch of our Carbon Neutrality Innovation Challenge, where we're partnering with Urban Tech Hub at Company. It's an EDC speared group to really drive home the notion that DOB itself is going to step into the role of innovation, of an innovation hub, and a leader in making sure that we're a voice in promoting innovation for the industry as a whole. Whether the department can use the specific innovative tool or not is irrelevant to me. I want the industry to really embrace this. So that's our first sort of step into the innovation world. We'll continue to do that. And for the folks, the semi-finalist of the challenge we launched yesterday, We will actually have them presenting at our Build Safe, Live Safe conference that we
Great.
sadly had to move to September. It's September 25th now.
We're all going to be very busy in September. That's
It's going to be the
Let
month
me
to do
jump in
everything.
1 minute. I'm thinking out loud. You know, Melanie, you know me. I like to come up with things on the spot sometimes. But let's get one of the people from your team that's working on innovation to be part of our innovation council. I think that would.
Oh, we'd love that.
And let's really come up with things together.
We
Because
love
I
that.
said it earlier. We're in this together, and more than any time now. And I say this to the people listening to us today: we are in this together. We don't know what the world's going to look like by the summer, so it's in all of our interests to be together. So yeah, second,
Great. Count us in.
which is how do we get people to, you know, start doing things instead of day one, maybe day negative 12 or 13. I don't even know if that's a term, but it might be.
I mean, I think we're there. I mean, we on certainly on the pre-development side, on the pre-construction side, I think we've gotten to the point where folks are doing everything they can just short of finishing the last piece of paperwork to print your permit. And I have to be mindful of the fact, and we'll continue to look at it just to make sure that we are getting as close to press the print button. But we also have that sort of that balance that we have to strike to make sure that our first focus right now is COVID response, ensuring the non-essential ban is in place, ensuring folks in the field are operating in conformity with that, and for those who are working, they're doing it right.
A couple of questions on essential, if I could jump in.
Yeah.
Hotel construction sites, are those now deemed essential?
Hotel is an essential business, and so for active businesses that have work, that is essential.
So if someone is, I want to make sure I get this because George Leventis is asking me. If you are currently working on a hotel site, you are essential.
If the site is, and you know what, I'm going to pull up. Ask your next question. I'm
All right, I'll ask my next question.
I'm going to read it verbatim.
This is a question that I've gotten from a couple of people. So a site is deemed essential, right? They have a letter or whatever it is. They're on a map. They have a letter, whatever it is. They essential. Why are DOB inspectors still there 2-3 times a week checking to see if they are essential? That sounds like a waste of time to me.
Well, so two things, right? So just because you're essential and you are working does not mean that the department is going to never come by again. Like I said, you're essential, you're working fantastic. Now we have to make sure you're doing it correctly, to code, to plans, and equally as important, if you're essential or you're operating because of an emergency, we have to actually make sure you're doing that in accordance to the approved scope. And we have folks in the field every single day doing essential site visits and non-essential site visits.
Got it.
So that'll continue.
So non-essential sites, if they are receiving a request for an inspection, is the inspection still going to continue on a non-essential site right now?
So depending on what inspection. So we are inspecting to ensure that non-essential sites are not activated unless they are approved, and that the site itself remains safe for the public. But two, if you have a non-essential site and you're looking for a development inspection, we are prioritizing and not offering the ability for non-essential sites to get certain development inspections completed.
Got it. I have a lot of friends who are in the expediting business. How do we envision the role of the expediter now, particularly with the new universe, the new normal that's coming online soon?
So to my filing representative friends out there,
Yes.
there is an opportunity in this industry for anybody who's interested to work. We're certainly not in the business of limiting that. But that being said, the practice of how you engaged with the department Before COVID was changing with DOB now, during COVID is dramatically changing, and we expect that to continue. So we're not putting anybody out. We're just saying we have to be more transparent. Our process needs to be more transparent across the board, and that transparency is in everybody's interest, from the person on the field, in the field, to the person who is writing the check. Whether you're, a single family homeowner that's doing a job, a project in your house, or you're, a multinational company, everybody needs that transparency.
Got it. Interesting question. Someone has a completed construction site, all finished, ready to go. Obviously, COVID happens. The site is not essential, but they need a TCO inspection. Are you still doing that for non-essential sites right now that are fully completed and ready to go?
For non-essential, I believe the answer is no.
Okay.
And again, the straddle there is, and we're going to fact check my answer in real time there. But the complication there, and just to be totally candid with everybody, we did look at yesterday or the day before, we did look at, because we've heard this from others, on the development side, can we get to final sign-off? The challenge with that, of course, is it's not always as simple as that one last inspection. It's everything that leads up to it before you get to the construction inspection, sign off, and you're good to go. It's all the other pieces. And we're living in a world where we have a non-essential construction ban. I've got to prioritize my field inspectors to ensure that ban is being enforced.
Got it. But it does sound like, particularly knowing that hopefully in a few weeks, at least we'll get into the next phase of opening, it might be a good opportunity for some TCO sites to be inspected. So at least that part of the economic engine, if they need to sell, rent, whatever it is, may start up. Just something to throw out.
Yeah, I mean, that logic is exactly the reason why we started looking at it again just a couple of days ago about, parsing out every step in that process to see where we could, if I realistically could, and if I can't, I can't,
Right.
but to see if we can get closer to that point.
Great. A couple of things we've heard. Someone asked a question, but I've heard this from a few other members. There have been some, sadly, a rise in burglaries on sites. By the way, not just on construction sites. In Bay Ridge, where I live, some lunatics went out because they're bored and decided to bust some windows on some storefronts, which is insane that, the police department and others in the city have to deal with this in addition to saving lives. But there are crazy people out there, and that will never change. So burglaries on construction sites. So some contractors now are going to have to do safety envelope of facilities and changes. Would that be considered essential, even if the site is not essential, but there's burglaries happening and vandalism and things like that?
Sure. So whether you are essential or non-essential, whether your site is essential or non-essential, if there is an emergent condition, sorry, my lights went off again, we're sustainable here.
Yes.
But if you have an emergent condition, if you have an emergency, the position of the department has always been do that, fix that. Certainly for all sites that are anticipating working for a reasonable duration, more than I got a busted window or I have a busted pipe, right. Go through the portal, make sure we deem you essential, make sure we agree with your version of essential, and deal with it that way. For anything else, again, on the busted pipe, on the busted window, if you needed a permit, go ahead, do that work. You have 2 days to come back and pull that permit. So that continues, that's never changed. But when in doubt, go through the portal. We have, our service levels are great there. So you're not going to get bogged down in bureaucracy and never be able to get out and see the end of the light. So go through the portal if you have a question.
Digital professional certification, will that be reintroduced? Currently, only in-person professional certification is permitted.
I didn't even know we took that away.
I didn't know that either. I'm just seeing it right now.
I'll come back to you. I didn't know
Dominic,
that
for
was a
that
thing.
question.
I didn't know
You
that
can
was a
get back
thing.
to us if you need
Yeah.
to. I would be remiss because I have this on my list of questions, and there's a bunch of them on it. Local Law 97 obviously has been a critical priority for DOB. Is there a change in timeline? Are we going to slow down a little bit, or are we all full steam ahead?
We're all full steam ahead.
Right. That's the answer.
That's the answer, my friend.
All right. Putting on your, I know, and by the way, there are a bunch of compliments to you, Commissioner, for the work you and your team are doing, and compliments on your borough commissioners.
Thank you.
In particular, got a few shout outs on here. So Marty, I don't know.
Which one in particular?
Okay. Putting on your former life's hat, school construction. Obviously, I know that Lorraine Grillo is working, I think, harder than anybody in the city of New York is right now. And by the way, knowing Lorraine, we're not surprised about that, right?
That's true. She's always worked hard with everybody.
That's right. So ESD has put school construction across the state as an essential. It seems to me that, and I get city budgets and all of that, but there's going to be no school until the end of August, right? And I shouldn't say no school. There will not be children generally in school buildings until the end of August. This would seem to be a great time to get a lot of school construction work done. I know that's a tough question, but.
ESD said they're essential, and we heard that loud and clear. So from my perspective, it's an essential service, business, whatever you want to call it, like the rest of the ones that ESD put on their list, and that is reflected in our guidance as well.
Awesome. A new site that is still in demo, that will be a new residential building of affordable housing. Can they get a permit to begin demo on a new affordable housing building?
So we've worked with HPD, HCR to make sure that we understand the universe of sites that would be eligible under the guidance. So that universe is known to us. Go through the portal. If you get a denial and you believe there was a beat missed between HPD, HCR, or any other entity in the affordable housing universe and the department, you can appeal, make your case there, and we'll correct it if we got it wrong on the first shot.
Great. Do we have a hotel answer yet?
Do we have a hotel answer?
You were going to double check on hotel construction. I have a lot of members in the hotel industry, and I know the Hotel Association, VJ, would want to hear that as well.
All right, I'm going to read it to you verbatim.
Okay, we love it.
So construction for existing, i.e. currently underway projects of essential businesses that do not fall under the categories listed in section 2A through 2G2. 1, such construction is defined as alterations to existing buildings of essential businesses with construction permits issued prior to April 15th, 2020.
So that means yes, if your site has a permit, you can work on a hotel site.
An alteration to existing buildings of essential businesses, hotels being an essential business.
Great, perfect. Okay, so if you're working on hotels, get back to work. We're excited. I think I want to spend the last few minutes because, there are a lot of technical, and I will say your website and the information we get daily has been wonderful. I think, there's a couple of questions about your vision, Commissioner, of a post-COVID normal in New York, particularly on building sites. And I think obviously that's a tough question to answer, but what do you see happening in the future?
That is a tough question because, I don't know what tomorrow will bring us, and every day is our new normal, right? But certainly, I think what you will see is, at minimum, the changes we put in place with respect to how you actually engage with the department in one of our physical locations, that's not going away. That's only going to grow. So the insistence on paper is going to go away because we cannot literally afford to continue to operate like that. And COVID really reinforced that notion for us in a very dramatic way. But certainly in the field, I think the biggest challenge for us and the biggest opportunity, the biggest challenge for us individually, the biggest opportunity for us all is our ability to let go of the way things were and the insistence on just because you did it that way, it must be that way. And so that is something as simple as saying, do you need, do you need to share tools? I don't know, I'm making this up, right? That is a very common thing, but does that have to be? And so our ability to collectively innovate and change our business practice, both in the field, in the office here, is the single greatest challenge and opportunity available to all of us collectively as an industry to continue to work efficiently and effectively. So from DOB's perspective, you'll see more of the get rid of the paper stuff in advance of DOB Now, which is going to continue. And sort of big picture, you'll see more of us insisting that we've got to be part of the conversation around innovation, and we've got to be part of a community of folks who actively want to do that.
Right, I think that's important. And I think the challenge, but it sounds like a challenge you're ready to meet, is to not just be this agency that's far removed from everybody, but really be part of the community and part of the dialogue and help figure this all out together, which I think is important. Okay, I keep getting hotel questions.
Oh boy.
Because clearly that's on the top of the agenda. So I think they understood your answer.
Yes.
I got 3 more questions. New construction.
Well, hold on. Before you ask your question, I have an update. So our online professional cert is coming back tomorrow. Hub Self-Service comes back tomorrow.
Okay, you're here. Repeat that one more time.
Hub Self-Service comes back tomorrow.
All right, good news. That's the beginning of the comeback.
That's true.
If you are a new hotel construction project,
yes,
you get a permit to start work on a new project since hotels are deemed essential.
I'm going to read you the sentence again, just because I'm insisting on getting this right. Such construction is defined as alterations, my emphasis added, to existing buildings of essential businesses with construction permits issued prior to April 15th. So those are my 2 emphasis. It's an alteration to an existing.
Okay, so you're not getting a new. Okay, so if you have a permit already, I think you're good, and if not, you got to wait. That's what it sounds like. Okay, after hours, you know, that's been a discussion point. I know you and I have spoken about it. I obviously have taken a position that, and way before COVID, that New York is a 24-hour city, and there are certain projects that should be happening after hours. I think it's reasonable for us to start thinking about, given that there might be social distancing norms that will continue for quite some time. There might be testing of people's temperatures that will take time, you know. So a 7 or 8 hour shift is going to be reduced with less people on the job. So I think something to really think about seriously is, and it's not for everything. I mean, if you're building a house on a residential block, obviously you don't want to be working at 2 in the morning, but are there projects that should be working 24/7 to get the city of New York moving? And it's something that we're all going to have to think about seriously. And I think we're all going to have to accept a little more noise in our lives and maybe a little bit more action in the middle of the night. Again, there are places where it makes sense. And I think DOB, working with the city council and the city and the mayor's office, need to kind of come up with a plan of action with that.
I think you got the partnership on that.
Yes, I
part,
did.
right. So yeah, we'll happily be a voice in that conversation.
Yes, good. And by the way, I'm hearing from friends of mine who own pizzerias in Midtown. And you know what they're saying? After being shut down for 2 months, we would love to be serving pizza at 2 a.m. to construction workers.
I bet. I
We
just had
need
pizza
to
last
really-
night for dinner, so.
Exactly. We need to really rebuild and come back there. So I think to clearly think about. Let's see what else we have here. Filing of AHV. We are told to stay home, but DOB wants us in person to file this request. Why is this safe?
Yep. So like I said, we've seen a 90% drop of in-person transactions. That means person to person, DOB staff to an individual. That does not mean that we have stopped our services that cannot be done on some version of e-file or online via email or phone. That means things that can't go electronic are going into a Dropbox no contact, or in the extremely limited circumstances, an in-person contact. So we're doing the best we can to get what was a paper-driven system as quickly as humanly possible away from that. But there's a limitation to to the volume of transactions we can change. It's not like I can just, turn a switch on and the entire department goes electronic. So I get the point, and certainly valid to raise, and we're, as eager as anybody else to get rid of the necessity of coming in person.
And speaking of coming in person, do you see additional self-certification happening in the future? Are you guys starting to think about what other things can be self-certified as opposed to, again, these inspections and things?
I mean, I think
Elevators is one example.
Which one's one example?
Elevators. Someone asked about elevators.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to say no inherently, but I think we have a delicate balance of making sure that we have enough eyes literally on something and enough opportunities to interject just to make sure things aren't going sideways, right? And at the end of the day, however that comes in, whether you're pro-certing your plans or you're doing a special inspection, you have a third party doing the inspection, however it came to us, it's our problem at the end. So I got to make sure that I can feel comfortable knowing that we're seeing enough. I'm never going to be in a position to see everything. So I'm not saying no, I'm just saying we have a delicate balance that we have to deal with here to make sure we strike it right.
Another interesting question is, and this one is TR1 and TR8 inspections for a non-essential project. But I imagine there are other inspections that would fall into this question. Once we say, okay, everybody back to work, obviously the DOB is going to be bombarded. How are we going to ensure that inspections will happen? Because there are certain continuations of projects that can't happen without certain inspections. So how do we ensure that people are not going to wait a very long time to get an inspection so that they can get back to work and put people back on jobs?
Yeah, I think that I would go back to, we started again to look at the entire universe of, and I mean, it's an entire universe of things that need a DOB inspector or things that need inspections, and making sure that we can, one, expect what the volume is going to be, and two, actually make sure that we're staffed accordingly. Now, do I think that the day the universe gets back to some version of what it was, that will be able to instantaneously give you that same level of service, particularly on the development inspection side that we were doing before. No, but what I don't expect is that we'll have tremendous delays. I don't see a universe, going back to your earlier question, Carlo, on the permitting, I don't see a universe from where I sit today that shows me anything to think that, you know, getting your permits, that last couple of steps that you need to do to press print is going to be anything beyond a handful of days, right? I'm not seeing a universe where we're talking about weeks of backlog. And I think that's a concern, certainly that's been expressed to me, that we're going to be in a position where it takes 2-3 weeks to get those last 2 pieces of paper in to get your permit. I'm just not seeing that now.
Right.
But we are watching our daily, our volumes literally on a daily occurrence. So every single day we get new sets of volume just to make sure that we're anticipating what our universe looks like and we can handle it.
Right. Well, I think this is a good place to wrap up and say thank you to the commissioner. Any final thoughts for us? I would ask you what you've been going to and taking out from, if you want to give anybody a shout out.
Oh.
Guests to talk about locals if they're doing anything.
So as everybody should know, if you know nothing about me, you should know that I'm proudly from the borough of Queens, never left, have no plans to leave one of my favorite boroughs, one of my 5 favorite boroughs. Professionally, my favorite borough personally. Last night's dinner was pickup from Luzo's, which is in sort of Court Square-ish neighborhood. And we had, we picked up a margarita and Est, which is a very, very good pizza. If you're in the neighborhood, stop by them. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, so to whoever is doing conflict of interest, I mean, no offense, this is just literally where I went yesterday.
It's good, you should have a right to.
So yeah, Luzo's, their Est pizza, which is East in Italian, is delicious. So.
Now, Melanie, I would agree with everything you just said. I would only substitute the word Queens, Brooklyn, and then we'd be the same.
That's the end of our. That's the end of our personal and professional relationships.
That's it. Come on, come on. But you know, Brooklyn and Queens go hand in hand.
They do. I have to give you a shout out though, because you're as I understand it, you're a supporter of my favorite bakery. So I'm going to give you my last few moments with you guys a nod to your Brooklyn love, my affinity, long-standing since I've been born, for Brooklyn bakeries. And Villa Bate is a place, very few reasons will get me personally to go to Brooklyn.
Well, I will tell you this, don't get me started on Villa Bate. Not only are they close personal family friends to us, but I would argue the best cannoli in America happens to be at Villa Bate. So when social distancing is over, I think it's time to commissioner of DOB back to Brooklyn, to Villa Bate.
Fair enough.
For a little,
have their marzipan.
Since you didn't have an espresso today, we'll get you an espresso then.
Fair enough, Carlo.
Commissioner, again, I really want to say you all are doing phenomenal work. It's challenging. We're learning daily new things, and I really want to commend you, your team at Central, and your team in the boroughs for all they're doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And I will say that next week on Espresso with Carlo, we will have Jano Lieber from the MTA on to talk about everything MTA and what they're doing and how construction continues there. Jano, as you know, is doing phenomenal work with the MTA. So everybody stay safe. Please, please, please exercise social distancing, wear masks, do everything you want. Obviously, none of us want to be home anymore. I miss going to work. As much as I can't believe I'm going to say this, I miss getting on the R train from Bay Ridge. It's insanity to think that, but we will get back, and it'll look differently for a while. But right now, we have to really protect everybody in the country. So stay safe, stay well, enjoy the day, and Melanie, thank you again. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.